Pre-order my novel, American Evil, in the description below. So I took a little bit of time reading an old Red Bull classic, Martin the Warrior, which to me was actually a very formative book growing up. It's weird because I remember like explicitly reading it for the first time, and it's odd because I've never come back to it. It's one of those books, I think, where it's not technically very good. It's contradictory to stuff that's like already been published, right? Like this is like what, the sixth Redwall book, and somehow it contradicts everything we knew about like Martin the Warrior up until this point, right? Like he has a completely different origin story than what we were told in Mossflower, by the way. It's like they tried justifying it, right? They tried coming up with like some justification for it, and they tried foreshadowing events, but it's one of those things where like, as an adult reading this, I'm just kind of like the author did not plan this out at all. And as a kid, I always like felt that way because you always had like these weird contradicting elements in Redwall books, stuff that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense, like how people just kind of forget that like that Coder existed, or like the evolution of the culture, or like characters acting in different ways, or like just how the timeline makes no sense. Like there's all this stuff you can address when it comes to Redwall books. Okay, like I was actually one of the, something I wanted to do, on the website before I shut it down, was like plot contrivances, and like the convoluted nature of it, and how like like the timeline and the books don't make any sense. Like it's a continuity snarl, basically. Like a lot of things that we're told don't make any sense. I think like Tim Ballisto has like two different deaths. Like he specifically stated to have died like two different ways in like two different books. So it's like it's uh it's a mess, man. Like it really is. But reading Martin the Warrior, I think, is like the most blatant example of this, because this is a book that introduces a character that's already been well established, that already has like an origin story in Mossflower, right? A character that we already know quite a bit about, and they put him in this circumstance that really makes no sense going by what we know, right? Like Martin the Warrior was once a slave. He was captured when he was very young, and he was brought to live among this generic tyrant and his horde, like this generic pirate, and he was forced to work until he was saved by uh, by some passerby who were just there, and then he goes on this little adventure with them, and it's it's really odd because this isn't a particularly good Redwall book, I would argue, right? Like I don't think the characters are all that strong. I don't think it's charming. I don't think that like the antagonists are particularly inspired. I don't think this really gives much of an insight into Martin's character, right? Like I don't think that it's a spectacular Redwall book, essentially. But at the same time, growing up, like I really, really enjoyed it purely because of like the messed up ending, in which the girl, Rose, who was in love with Martin at this point, they were in love with each other. Like how Rose, in the most out of nowhere, just ends up getting axed off, right? Like she legit does this thing where she's just like, "Oh, I love Martin. I can change him. Like I'll do anything for him. I'll go to war with him for him." And then she like dies. She just dies. And it's just like it's such a well executed death in a way. For me personally, like it makes the entire book. For me, I feel as if like the character, like the story was written specifically for this one moment to kind of emphasize like why Martin never married. Like he lost the love of his life, and for whatever reason he chose to never speak of her again, even among like the people he was closest to like later in life, right? So like the idea is that like this event traumatized him so badly that he never address this at all to anyone. And to me, it came off like when I was really, really young, it came off as like exceedingly tragic, right? Like this is like the real origin of Martin the Warrior. And I don't know, like even if it's kind of contrived, even if it makes no sense, like I still kind of love it. I still love the idea of it. But like again, as an adult, it's just kind of like, does this really work? Like when I think of like Mossflower, right? When I think of like, those characters, when I think of like how much personality they had, even the antagonists, right? Like when I think of like Gonf the Thief and just like his romance with Columbine and like what they were doing back in Mossflower. Like it's weird. Like reading this book, like you feel very uninvested in like everything that goes on, right? Each new character, each new idea, it just doesn't land. Like it's really odd in that way. And I don't know, like I don't know the mindset he was in when he wrote this. Like I feel like he must have lost someone like very close to him, and that's kind of why the story went in the direction it did. Because I think it's darker than most other Redwall books. Is my take on it. Like it's all about like Martin like being in slavery and then like getting back at his captors and like losing someone he cares about in the process. Like I can't think of any other Redwall book that like ends that objectively terribly, right? Because like people die in all these books, right? Like it's standard for them, but like at the same time they die for a reason. They already have families, they have things dying for things they care about. For Rose, like she was explicitly told, like you don't have to do this, right? Like it's not necessary for you to go fight with Martin, right? But like she was very insistent on it, like no, I have to do this. I have to do this because I love him, right? And she dies, because she loved him so much. That is like legit really tragic. It's sad. Like I cried the first time I read it. I believe. Like I again like the fact that I remember it like so explicitly, like it left such an impact on me. Like it is a legit really good ending even if it doesn't make sense with the continuity, right? Like Redwall is probably one of the big reasons why I'm like so obsessed with like making sure my continuity is like completely 100% solid because I grew up reading these books, I love these books and just seeing all these like weird contradictions and like story elements that didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like I again, I'm trying to do better. Okay, it's kind of my mindset, but there's no denying that like it did leave such an impact on me. Like it's one of those things that I just really really enjoyed growing up, left a really big impact on me, and I do hope that people still read and enjoy these books today. I'm really curious about how much they've remained relevant over the years. I personally still really would recommend them.